The billionaire stepped into the grand restaurant, his presence commanding attention, but his eyes suddenly froze on an unexpected sight. A quiet old waitress wiped a table gently, her movements slow and tired, yet something about her felt painfully familiar to him. He narrowed his eyes, trying to recognize her, as a strange unease settled deep inside his chest, without any clear reason at all. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments what time is it and where are you watching from. Let's start. The elegant woman beside him noticed his sudden silence, but he didn't respond, his entire focus locked onto that old waitress. The man standing next to her followed his gaze, confused at first, but soon realizing this moment carried something serious and deep. The waitress kept working, unaware that her past was about to collide with a future she never thought she would face again. The billionaire's heart began to pound as memories tried to surface, memories he had long buried beneath years of wealth and ego. He took a slow step forward, his confidence fading with every inch, replaced by a strange mix of shock and rising guilt. The soft golden lights above made the moment feel heavier, as if time itself slowed down to force him to face this truth. His mind whispered a name he had not spoken in years, a name connected to pain, sacrifice, and a forgotten bond. And in that silent moment, he realized this was not just coincidence. This was the beginning of something he could not escape anymore. He stood there frozen, his eyes fixed on her, as the truth slowly broke through the walls he had built around his past. The woman who once cared for him now stood in silence, cleaning tables, living a life he never bothered to question or see. Her face showed years of struggle, yet there was no bitterness, only quiet strength that made his guilt grow heavier inside. He remembered how she stood by him when he had nothing, protecting him when even his own family turned away from him. But when success came, he walked away, choosing pride over gratitude, convincing himself that he owed her nothing at all. Now, every excuse felt empty, every decision felt wrong, as reality stood in front of him, impossible to ignore anymore. The elegant woman beside him whispered softly, asking what was wrong, but he could not find the words to answer her. The man next to her watched closely, sensing tension, as if this moment was about to change something far beyond their control. His hands trembled slightly as he took another step closer, his heartbeat echoing loudly in his ears with every second passing. She still had not noticed him, her focus lost in work, as if life had taught her to expect nothing from anyone anymore. That hurt him more than anything, realizing she had stopped expecting even the smallest kindness from the world around her. In that moment, he understood this was not just a meeting. This was a test of the kind of man he had truly become. He slowly walked closer, each step heavy, as if the distance between them carried years of silence he never tried to break. His eyes stayed fixed on her hands, rough and tired, still working with care, just like they did when she once raised him. A deep breath escaped him as guilt tightened in his chest, reminding him how easily he had erased her from his life. The elegant woman beside him sensed something serious, her grip tightening slightly as she watched his emotions shift rapidly. The man next to her remained silent, observing carefully, realizing this was not just recognition, but a painful history unfolding. Finally, the waitress looked up, her eyes meeting his, and in that second time seemed to stop completely around them. There was no anger in her eyes, only quiet surprise, as if she never expected life to bring him back to her again. He struggled to speak, his voice stuck between regret and shame, unable to form even the simplest words at that moment. She studied his face calmly, recognizing him slowly, not by his wealth, but by the boy she once knew and protected. A faint, tired smile appeared on her face, not of joy, but of acceptance, as if she had already forgiven him long ago. That silent forgiveness broke something inside him, making his guilt even heavier than before, harder to carry than success itself. In that fragile moment, he realized she never needed his wealth. She only needed the respect he had failed to give her. He finally gathered courage and spoke her name softly, his voice shaking as years of distance collapsed into one fragile moment. She paused her work completely, holding the cloth still as if time itself waited for what he would say after all these years. The elegant woman stepped slightly back, sensing this was not her place, as emotions deeper than words filled the space. The man beside her crossed his arms quietly, watching closely, understanding that something meaningful was about to unfold. He apologized, not with pride, but with a broken honesty, admitting he had forgotten the one person who never left him. His words were simple yet heavy, carrying regret that could not be hidden behind wealth or status anymore in this moment. She listened without interruption, her eyes calm, as if she had already lived through this pain long before he arrived here. When he finished, silence filled the air, and for a second he feared she would walk away without saying anything at all. But instead, she spoke gently, saying she never expected anything from him, only hoped he would live a better life. Her words were not angry, not blaming, but that softness made them hurt even more, cutting deeper than any harsh truth. He realized she had suffered quietly while he celebrated success, never once looking back to see what he had left behind. In that moment, something inside him changed, as he knew apology alone would never be enough to fix what he had done. He looked around the grand restaurant, realizing how unfair it felt that she served others while he lived a life of endless comfort. The weight of that contrast crushed his pride, making him question every success that ignored the sacrifices behind it. He gently asked why she never reached out to him, his voice filled with regret and a need to understand her silence. She smiled faintly, explaining she didn't want to become a burden, believing he had already moved on from everything. Her words struck him deeply, exposing how his distance made her feel unwanted, as if she no longer had a place in his life. The elegant woman beside him lowered her gaze, clearly affected, realizing this was a story of love lost in silence. The man next to her exhaled slowly, seeing the pain in both of them, understanding how pride can destroy relationships. He stepped closer and held the edge of the table, as if grounding himself, before making a decision that felt long overdue. With a steady but emotional voice, he told her she would not continue working like this anymore, not after everything she had done. She shook her head gently, refusing at first, saying she had learned to survive and did not want to depend on anyone again. That response made him realize how deeply his absence had shaped her strength, forcing her to live without expecting support. In that moment, he understood redemption would not come from words, but from actions that proved he had truly changed. He took a deep breath, steadying himself carefully, knowing this moment demanded far more than empty promises. It required real change he could truly prove through actions. With calm respect in his voice, he told her she was never a burden, but the very reason he ever found the strength to rise and reach where he stands today. His voice carried honest truth now, with no pride and no distance left, just a son trying to fix everything he had broken through years of painful silence. She looked at him carefully and deeply, searching his eyes, trying to understand if this was guilt speaking for the moment or a genuine change of heart. The elegant woman stepped forward softly, placing a reassuring hand on his arm, silently showing her support for the difficult decision he was making. The man beside her nodded slightly in quiet agreement, as if confirming this was the right step forward, a moment that required courage and not hesitation. He gently asked her to sit down, something no one had offered her in that place before, treating her with the respect and dignity she always deserved. At first, she hesitated for a brief moment, but his tone was different now, filled with warmth and care, not authority, making it hard for her to refuse him. As she slowly sat down, the entire atmosphere shifted, turning that simple restaurant into a place where past and present were finally meeting again. He promised her he would never force anything upon her, but he truly wanted to stand beside her now, the same way she once stood beside him. Her eyes softened slightly at his words, the first small sign that his sincerity was reaching her heart. Though years of pain could not disappear instantly, in that quiet and emotional moment, hope appeared gently between them, small but real, as if life was giving them one final chance to heal together. He slowly knelt beside her chair, not as a billionaire with power, but as a son asking with a trembling heart for a chance to fix what he had broken long ago. The entire restaurant fell completely silent, every eye drawn to this deeply unexpected moment where his pride finally collapsed and gave way to pure humility. His voice trembled as he promised her he would never walk away again, no matter how difficult or painful it would be, to rebuild the trust he once destroyed. Tears filled his eyes, not as a sign of weakness, but as raw truth, as he finally allowed himself to feel the pain he had buried and ignored for years. She looked down at him in quiet shock, her hand slightly shaking, as if she never imagined in her life that she would see him like this again. The elegant woman stood quietly in the background, her expression soft and understanding, knowing this moment was about healing and should not be disturbed. The man beside her watched with deep respect, realizing this was not just an apology, but a powerful transformation happening right in front of everyone. He gently held her hand with care and respect, as if afraid she might disappear again if he held on too tightly or made another mistake. She did not pull her hand away this time, her silence speaking louder than any words, showing that her heart was slowly beginning to open again. Years of painful distance stood between them like a wall, but this single honest moment began to break that barrier piece by piece. He lowered his head slightly, accepting whatever decision she would make next, fully ready to face every consequence of his past actions. And in that heavy silence, everything depended on her next words, words that would decide if this story would end in regret or true redemption. She gently tightened her grip on his hand, her eyes softening, as if her heart had finally decided to let go of the past pain. A quiet tear rolled down her cheek, not from sadness, but from a long-awaited relief she never thought she would feel again. He looked up at her with hope, his expression fragile, waiting for a sign that he had not lost her completely forever. She slowly nodded, accepting him again, not because of his wealth, but because she still saw the boy she once raised. That single moment lifted a weight from his chest, giving him a peace no success had ever brought into his life before. The elegant woman smiled softly, stepping back with respect, understanding that this bond was deeper than anything else. The man beside her exhaled in relief, witnessing something rare, a broken relationship finding its way back through truth. He stood up and helped her gently, no longer as a stranger, but as family, giving her the place she always deserved. From that day forward, he chose to stand beside her openly, not hiding his past, but honoring it with every step he took. The restaurant returned to its quiet rhythm, but for them, life had changed in a way that could never be undone again. The story ends here, but the mystery lives on. Like, subscribe, and return for the next unforgettable journey.